Yeah, so my name's Ian Powell. I work for Arrow ECS. I'm responsible for the IBM maintenance business. Been at Arrow for sort of five years now, ex-IBM, 20 odd years in IBM, always been in the maintenance business. Neil, who's come to join us today, was my sort of ex-boss in IBM. Last job I think you had in IBM was sort of TSS sales director for Europe. Neil obviously introduced himself a little bit more as Neil's session begins. I just wanted to give you a quick intro really. So obviously I don't want to go through all the maintenance offerings and support offerings because this is not what this session is about. The point of this session really is to deliver, the power and value of developing, nurturing and sustaining a recurring revenue stream from support services. Obviously, from my perspective, support services really is the backbone of any IT solution. I think, like I was saying earlier on in the session, whether it's AI or whatever the kind of solution that we're putting in place for clients these days, behind all that, whether it's software, hardware, whatever the infrastructure is, the backbone of that is IT support services. Whether you like it or not, it needs to kind of be there almost like an insurance policy. Just to give you a kind of flavour, just so we're clear, when we're talking about support services from IBM, that's hardware maintenance. So, your power unit, Z systems, storage, IBM software. So from a TSS or technical support services perspective, when we talk about software maintenance, we're talking about the operating systems as opposed to application. So, ZOS or i5OS, that kind of thing. Some people may or may not know this, but multi-vendor. So IBM's globally supports, all the main manufacturers out there. They're not just a provider on their own OEM. Big chunk of revenue from IBM at a global level. I think, is it 40%, Neil, of IBM's sort of maintenance revenue is multi-vendor these days, I think, globally? 35. Okay, and then something that people really probably not too aware of, and something that's becoming more and more important is open source software support. So IBM now partner with a company called RogueWave in the States who deliver support on open source. It's a kind of fairly new opportunity in the UK, but we're starting to drive that that message out there. And as you know, there's thousands of open support or open source products that IBM can help to support. But I don't want to delve into the key offerings. I think it's more important what Neil's got to tell you in terms of helping your business really with support services and recurring revenues. So from my perspective, my experience of dealing with support services and clients, I think it gives you far more greater access and control within the client. Because I think once you're in there, once you've sold support services, you've kind of, I suppose you're open to a whole network within the client really. I think there's, if you're selling to one part of a business, whether it's, the HR department and you're supporting machines or services there, over a period of time, if you've got a support contract in place for 3 years, ultimately you will become, open to other people within that client and other opportunities will arise. So I think you gain a greater access and a greater control within your client's estate. And for me, customer-centric, right? So I think once you've got a support service, a revenue support service, you've always got that open door, really. It's not so hardware as in, when you're selling hardware, when you're selling certain software products, it's very transactional. With a support contract in place, if it's running for 3 years, you've always got that sort of, open door you can push on and, go and speak to your client at any kind of point, really. So it does make you kind of center of the client. And then finally, really, it's that kind of what Neil will come on to and what Neil's going to talk about really is and what this session's all about is the health of the business and how it contributes to sustaining a really strong revenue stream. And of course, with maintenance, typically the sort of margin profits we see selling IBM maintenance for our partners are typically anything between sort of 10 to 25%. So depending on what you're selling, it's just a good point to make, typically we'll see a run rate of 10, 15% as normal, but then there's certain offerings where we get back-end rebates that you guys can benefit from, such as, when you're selling open source. So it's a multi-vendor offering, so we get 10% back-end rebates, and those are passed on to the partner. So there's lots of contributing sort of factors to it, really. But Neil's going to take you through the Edison report, which IBM commissioned. But he'll be able to really kind of articulate, the power of delivering this within your organisation. So I didn't want to take up too much time, really. So I'm not going to, as I say, batter on about offerings and what IBM Support's all about. On that basis, I'll sort of hand over to Neil, really. If there's any other questions after that's specific to what we can deliver from an Arrow perspective, then by all means, just grab me and we can have a chat. Neil. Cheers, mate.
Can I just grab the mic so the mic can hear us?
Thank you.
Okay, just talk amongst yourselves for a second. Okay, so welcome to this afternoon's session. And straight after lunch, great to come and talk about support services. Just out of interest, what made you invest this hour in this session? Just give me a feel for why you came to this session this afternoon. What was the driver behind it? We're a small, compact group, so it's okay, you can share.
We've moved from NBT, moved from selling security products to managed services, basically, because that's where the value is, rather than just selling it's a tin company. So putting that overall wrap around. So that's from my perspective.
Okay, so you're changing your business model.
Yep.
Okay, what else? What other thoughts?
Just to get an update to see what else is on.
Okay, all right, so we'll give you some perspective on that.
I'm from IBM, and I just came from the Cloud Pack session, and it seems like a fantastic opportunity for partners to support the whole cloud business.
Yeah.
It's really provision of services.
Okay, all right, brilliant, thank you. Any other thoughts? What made you invest your time here this afternoon?
We're already in recurring revenues on subscriptions. I'm just checking to see if we're missing anything.
Great. Okay, so you're in the right place. And Jess, so all resellers apart, you're IBM, everyone else resellers? You're IBM as well, okay. Anyone a reseller owner here? Anyone own one of the owners here or one of the board here, just out of interest? Okay. So my name's Neil Thubron, as Ian said. Lots of things, I do lots of stuff these days, but I was 30 years in IBM. Most of that was in TSS, all of it was in services. And as Ian said, the last thing I did was I was running Europe for sales for TSS when I left 4 years ago. What I do now is a lot of things, but one of the things I do is I'm a Tss Evangelist. I go around the world helping people understand the value of this part of the business. Because it is the unsung hero of the business. It's the unsung. It's always thought of as the other thing that you add on once you've done all the sexy stuff. But actually, this, from a reseller point of view, from your business's point of view, this is one of the most important things to do. And I had a feeling that that was the case. And I was involved with commissioning a white paper with IBM and Edison, who's this company here, who I actually do some work with. I've been working with them for the last 4 years. So Edison is in fact, they're literally based just around the corner from here. So they're a company that helps listed companies and private companies actually get their message out to investors and shareholders in the marketplace. So they do research. So they write research. You know, when you see analysis from research in the Financial Times or in any of the financial papers, Edison's one of those companies that do that. They have analysts that analyse all the different sectors. And they're the kind of guys that put the buy-sell on share prices and get the message out. So companies pay for them to do research to get message out to different pools of money and to get message out to new shareholders. They also have an investor relations arm. The investor relations piece is all about introducing new investors to companies that are listed or are looking at developing that. So they're a regulated company. They're regulated by the Financial Services Authority. So everything they publish, so when this paper was published, it had to be signed off through the FSA because what's in that paper can shift share prices, which is why they had to do that. So I'm just going to run through this. I'm not the author of this. I've presented it several times. I was involved in developing it. So I'm going to take you through it. And it's all about how does recurring revenue, so there's two parts to this session. First part is about how does recurring revenue deliver value to your businesses? And secondly, how does recurring revenue, or how does the TSS business deliver value to your customers? Okay, so it's two different parts of the session. So let's start. So the superheroes of the business. The undersung superheroes of the business is the recurring revenue, which I suspected was true, and then it all came out in this white paper. So let's have a look at what are the benefits. Where do we see recurring revenue? Well, recurring revenue hasn't just appeared out of nowhere. You were talking about a subscription model. Right? Subscription models, if you look at examples of recurring revenue, you know, subscription models are now very much at the forefront of recurring revenues. If you look at Gillette in 1913 or something it was, they invented the first recurring revenue stream with their razor blade. Then if you look at some of those examples there, printers, you know, the printer world has got the recurring revenue stream sorted out down to a T, haven't they, with what they do. And the car industry, 30% of revenues now comes from the car sale for the car industry. 70% comes from recurring revenue streams, servicing, leasing, and you know, those kind of things. And it's not, you know, it's not a new market from an IBM point of view either. You know, IBM was in the financing business in the 70s. That's how they built up their mainframe business, was in the services business. And if you look at some of these examples and you think of recurring revenue, they're very different to thinking about hardware maintenance or software maintenance or support services. So the recurring revenue model has been there for a long time. So when Edison looked at this, they looked across the board at the benefits these companies have seen from building up recurring revenue streams, and they looked specifically at this industry as well. So benefit one with building a recurring revenue stream, kind of obvious, is it gives you better visibility of your revenue, which means you can make business decisions. If you've got a recurring revenue stream coming in, it's better for your cash flow clearly. It's predictable, you know what's coming in, so you can see what's coming down the road. You've got better visibility of the trouble ahead, and then you've got the resilience in the business for that. So benefit one is it gives you better decision making. Here's a great example. So if you project forward, and by the way, if some of this sounds obvious, that's because it is obvious, but not everyone gets it. Actually, let me just ask a question if you know the answer to it. Do you know, in your businesses, what percentage of your turnover is recurring revenue and what percentage is one-off product sales type revenue? Any kind of idea, rough idea?
98% is recurring.
98% is recurring. Yeah. Okay, so you could do this pitch then, or you'll be able to confirm all of these benefits then. What else? What about the rest of you?
Yeah, similar.
Similar? Okay. So I'm not going to tell you anything new. You're just going to get confirmed that you're doing the right things. Anyone got the other way around? Anyone got less than 50% recurring revenue? Which is a classic reseller model, by the way. Most resellers that have come through the IBM hardware reseller, it's about 20% hardware, 30% hardware. The rest is, it's 20-30% recurring revenue. The rest is product sales. So you can see, I mean, this again, it's kind of obvious, some of this, but you get better visibility, better decision making. You can plan things, obviously, and you've got revenue building up each year, because each year you're adding more contracts to your recurring revenue stream. So if you've got 3-year contracts, 5-year contracts, they're adding each year, they're adding up, and you've got more predictability, which gives you more resilience as well. Look as we go through. So that's the first benefit, really obvious one. So we talked about business resilience, and here's some real examples. So what Edison did was they modeled different businesses. So they looked at classic business that has upfront revenues of 80% and a business that has 80% subscription revenues. The green line here is the profit line. Okay, so if you have a 20% drop in new orders in an 80% upfront revenues type business, there's you can see the impact on the profit. There's a 40% drop in profit. This is modeled, this was modeled through a financial model. Same impact on the 80% subscription business, 20% drop in new orders, very little impact on profit. Profit stayed slightly flat. And this was what they modeled. Now, again, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? But the profit that you get from recurring revenue is higher than the profit you get from from the one-off revenue, the upfront revenue. So second benefit gives you better business resilience because you're not being impacted by those downturns. And these examples were 3 examples that Edison looked at when they were looking at their model. And all of those were impacted by having too much revenue coming in from upfront revenues rather than from recurring revenues. You kind of recognise that. I can see people's heads nodding around the room. All of those companies got hit, didn't they? And some of them don't exist anymore. So third benefit. The third benefit is how investors view your business. And this was the really, really interesting thing that came out of the study. And in fact, what we did after we had the white paper put together was we got a group of reseller owners together from all over Europe. Actually, it wasn't just from the UK. And we got we got a fund manager came in, so from an equity investor point of view, and we had a debt investor come in from Bank of Ireland. So they came in and they talked about what they look for when they're looking for investing in businesses. And there were a couple of things that came out of this. So this was, Warren Buffett said what he's looking for is predictable, proven earnings, and an economic moat. Recurring revenue gives you both of those because it gives you that predictability of the revenues that are coming through because of the existing contracts you've got, and it gives you this revenue moat that supports the business in the times of hard times, which was what we saw in the last chart. So let's have a look at, again, I guess some of you must be in the software subscription business by the sound of it then. Okay, all right. So you'll get this model, and this just supports what you would see in your businesses then. So those that have have recurring revenue businesses will see an outperformance in the valuation of their business. And there were 3 things where they saw investors valuing businesses differently. The first was from a debt investor point of view, so borrowing money, that's a city way of saying borrowing money. A debt investor point of view, you could borrow at lower interest rates. So the guy from Bank of Ireland who was in the session that we had, there was quite a significant difference in the percentage you could borrow at if you had a higher recurring revenue stream than if you had lots of spiked one-off revenues. Secondly, if you're looking for investors to invest in your business, one of the things that most PE firms are looking for, most investing firms are looking for, is a recurring revenue stream that is greater than 50%. Some of them have rules around what they invest in, and they won't invest in anything that's below 70% recurring revenue. So if you want investors, you're excluding investors if your recurring revenue stream isn't higher. And then the third area was that valuation of the business was significantly affected as well. So we invited a guy along to present at the event who just sold his reseller business. And in 2003, they had an offer for the business that didn't go through. And they had 80% upfront product revenue. They were a networking reseller, so they sold networking products and some services alongside those products. So he had a 5 times multiplier for his business in 2003 when that was his model. The sale didn't go through for various reasons, and then they changed their model. They changed it, and literally over the next 6 years, they turned it on its head. So it was 78% recurring revenue, and 22% was from upfront product sales. And he talks through the journey he went through. It was a painful journey to go through that change because you had to change a lot of the culture inside the business. You had to change the way you dealt with customers. I'll talk a little bit about that. But when it came to the valuation of the business, he got a 9 times multiplier for the business 6 years later because he'd switched the model around. So that was a real example of where, if you want to sell your business, very valuable to have a strong recurring revenue stream. This is if they looked at, because not everyone publishes in their accounts, not every business publishes their services revenue streams or their recurring revenue streams. So Edison could find out as much as they could, and this was some of the impact on the PE ratios of companies, so the profit to earnings ratios of companies. And this was from 2017 reports. So the companies at this end of the scale, so the guys that invested in their recurring revenue, had high recurring revenue streams, typically had a higher PE ratio, multiplier. And the guys that had low so these are more of the hardware sales type people down this end, or one-off type sales. They had a lower impact on their PE ratio. There was some that was slightly different. This is also in Germany. But that's an interesting model of looking at the PE ratio versus percent of recurring revenues. Okay, so another insight into how investors view your recurring revenue streams. Okay, let's look at one of the most important factors once you're building your recurring revenue business, because as I mentioned about this guy who sold his networking reseller business, there are a very different way of managing the business, which I guess you'll understand, right? If you're investing in this, it becomes all about retaining customers, about the customer, about engaging with the customer and making sure you retain them going forward. And the next slide shows you why that's really important. But then you've got to engage your sales team differently. How you work with your, because if you're incenting your sales team on selling product sales, it's very different to selling recurring revenue, to making sure that they are keeping a customer happy so that you can renew that customer going forward. And what they found was retention is key. Retention has a massive impact on your EBITDA. So they modeled it. And what they did was they modeled a 20% year-on-year growth order with a 25% churn rate. 25% loss. So you're losing 25% of your recurring revenue contracts. And then 10% with 12.5% churn. So they kind of halved it. So you sell less, sell half as less, but if you lose half the number, does that make sense so far with me? So if you sell, you have to sell 20% here, 10% here, lose 25% here, lose 12.5% here. Look at the impact on EBITDA as this was modelled. So they just used some numbers in here to build up a model business. 10.3 million EBITDA, 18% margin, and this is nearly double, I think, 18 million EBITDA, 29% margin. So by selling, you could sell less if you focused on retaining the business you've got. And so when we presented this, it was fascinating when we presented this to this group, this room of people. There was an Italian lady there that owns a reseller in Milan. And when we put this chart up, she stopped the meeting and she said, "Can I just go and make a phone call?" And she went out and she came back and said, "I've just moved one of my salesmen from selling hardware to protecting our renewals because we don't do it enough." And she hadn't got this in her head. She hadn't realized this is what happens to your EBITDA if you don't protect your existing revenue stream. I mean, if you go back to that first chart I showed you, where the revenue is building up every year with those first 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, if you're losing 25% of that, you're having to resell it or you're having that impact of it, aren't you? Does that make sense? They're quite shocking numbers, aren't they? When you look at that and you see the impact on EBITDA and you see the impact on the margin of not looking after and not nurturing your existing clients. Okay, so the 4 benefits then that we talked through gives you business predictability and resilience. It makes you more attractive to all the different types of investors that you might want to get into your business. And if you've got higher renewals, it puts less pressure on your EBITDA and on your year-to-year sales that you have to do. So the white paper you've got in front of you is the actual document that they sent out, which the final product of the research. So it's got all of this information in there, and if you're sending slides out, then this will go out with it. So that's kind of, anyone got any questions on the recurring revenue part of this and how important it is to your business? Does it make sense? Are you all happy with that? Any questions on that? Because I'm going to move on to the value of this to your customers now. Okay, so far? Okay. Right, let's talk about how does TSS deliver value to the customers. So I'm going to introduce something we use a lot when we're working with resellers, training them around the value of TSS. I'm going to introduce you to something called the TSS whiteboard, and we use this a lot. So typically, your customers, when we're talking about this support type environment, are trying to optimize their support. So they're trying to optimize their support. And it's a general term, but what they're trying to do is get the most out of it. Okay, so to optimize their support. What sort of issues do they have? Typically, they've got outage type issues. They need to improve their availability. They're all got cost issues. They're all pushed on cost and budget. I bet you haven't got a client that doesn't have budget pressures. They've all got, they're trying to manage the efficiency of their environment, their resources, and the flexibility of their environment and their resources as well to cope with the business demands that are coming. So those are called the drivers. So typically, customers are trying to optimize their support when you're talking about this environment, and they're trying to increase their availability, reduce their costs, improve their efficiency, and maximize their flexibility. Some of the issues they have that's stopping them doing that is basically their resources. They don't have the right skills, they don't have the right people to do this. They have SLDs, so service levels that are being driven by the business to keep the business up and running. And they have a high complexity environment, especially with multiple suppliers and with open source. You've got this complex environment now these guys are having to manage. So they're trying to optimize their support. The things why is that important to them? They have to increase their availability. They can't afford downtime. They have to maximize the budget they've got, or fit it within the budget they've got. They have to be efficient. They have to be flexible. The things that are holding them back are training and skills, or their people, the demands of the business, and the complexity of the environment. So then we look at, so how does TSS support that? So TSS supports that by taking customers on a journey from a reactive type environment to a proactive type environment. Okay, and it does that through, the classic environment that most clients are in with their contracts. If they've got a break-fix type contract, if they've got one at all, they've got a break-fix type contract. The journey that they're taken on is then up to integrated service support, and then managed services. And I wanted to draw this up for you because it's one of the best ways of describing how value is added. So I'll put the whole whiteboard up here. So that's the complete whiteboard. And so how's that really delivering benefit to clients? How's that really adding value? So they're trying to optimize their support environment. They're trying to maximize availability, fit within a budget, be as efficient as they can, be as flexible as they can. They've got challenges around people, service levels with the business, and the complexity of the environment. So the journey that IBM and TSS takes them on, and the services that these guys are selling through Arrow, is they're taking them from a reactive to proactive. So by doing this, what you're doing is starting to be more proactive here. So you're starting to reduce the number of outages. You're starting to predict the number of outages before they happen. You're starting to be proactive about the services you provide. And if you can just save a little bit of outage time, you can add significant business value, because every outage costs companies in lost revenue, loss of reputation, brand impact, those kind of things. Typically, they're trying to manage so many different vendors in their environment as well. And by implementing a solution that includes all of these services, you can start reducing the number of people involved in the process. There was a survey done by Gartner probably 10 years ago, so you can multiply the numbers based on inflation from 10 years ago, that for every supplier you have to manage, every vendor you have to manage, costs about $300,000 a year. And that's in meetings, in contract negotiations, in the time it takes in the sales process. So the costs you can take out by pulling that all together in one contract is significant. You can improve efficiency by implementing these services. The customer's resources are not tied up on the low-end stuff, the low-end reactive work where they don't really need to be. They want to be focusing on more strategic stuff so they can be more efficient with their services. And by doing that, they can create more flexibility. Resources, that you don't need so many resources if you've got an environment being supported for you, as well as helping you deliver to the service levels. And if you've got so many vendors out there and you can manage that down to one with one service level, if you can manage that down to, or one, or at least you reduce it down, then you reduce the complexity. And the way, the way IBM delivers that, or the way TSS delivers that, is through people, having the right people in the right place, process, and technology. So using the right processes, the best of practice processes, and the technology to support that. And this isn't something that's just been invented, it's being done for everyone. So there are examples we could use here going around the whiteboard. But does that make sense? So the whiteboard is a way we use this when we're teaching to reseller salespeople. You know, how to sell the value of TSS, of technical support services, of the services that Arrow deliver. See, my writing is shocking, isn't it? It looks okay close up, but when you stand back here, it's... this is the best one to take a picture of, by the way, because that's awful. But it's this simple environment. So how does that add value to the client? So you're selling a maintenance contract with some additional services added on top of it here, but the value you're delivering is impacting the whole business. It's not a cost center. It's not a cost center, it's a value center. You're delivering value to the business. One of the services in here is microcode support. A huge number of outages that happen that are unplanned are down to the wrong levels of microcode. And if you buy one of the, or if this is a complete service that includes microcode support, suddenly you've got less chance of impact on your availability as well. So this is, I describe this as, it's when you build this up, as you go through what the client's looking for, the business challenges they've got, or what's driving them to do this, what's stopping them getting there, and just by building up TSS services from the break-fix environment you're in today, or most people are in today, upwards, is where you really get in value add in your clients. So if you can take them on a journey from here to here, then going back to that picture from the Edison white paper, this makes clients much more sticky. If you're delivering the complete support solution, then when it comes to renewal time, it's a lot easier conversation to have, and it doesn't become a price conversation because you're delivering so much value to their business needs. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? You're okay with that? Okay, so any questions on that? So it's kind of, hopefully you're getting the picture. This is a value conversation. It's a value conversation to you and your businesses about building your recurring revenue stream and protecting it once you've built it. And it's a value conversation about the business value you're delivering to a client through the support services you sell to them. Everyone okay with that? Okay. Any questions or thoughts? Does this make sense? Okay. So, let me just show you. I'm just going to try and get the sound working properly on this. This was a video that IBM put together, and it's available on their website. Let me try and turn the volume up, see if the volume works. And it's another survey done by Forrester, so it gives you some more information you can use on the value of doing this.
Do you want to learn more about the Forrester Total Economic Impact of IBM Multi-Vendor Support Services and how IBM can help organizations like yours lower their overall hardware maintenance expense? Well, you're in the right place, and I'm the right person. Hi, my name is Leo, Master TEI Consultant, self-proclaimed value detective, and your guide for the next few minutes. Let's start sleuthing. IBM commissioned Forrester Consulting to deliver this clip in a total economic impact case study on IBM Multi-Vendor Support Services. Total economic impact is Forrester's proprietary methodology for quantifying and articulating the value of technology investments. Forrester interviewed IBM's internal experts on multi-vendor support services, our own Forrester analysts, and surveyed 24 IBM MVS customers who have used the technology for multiple years. We spoke to each group about the benefits, costs, risks, and flexibility of IBM multi-vendor support services, and then quantified and articulated those components in a financial model and case study. We aggregated the data from the interview and surveys and developed our own composite organization. This composite organization is a US-based organization with annual revenue of $500 million and 2,000 employees. They have 50 x86 servers and 1 Tier 1 and 3 Tier 2 storage arrays, along with 7 network devices that were approaching end of life or OEM warranty expiration. Analyzing the needs of the composite organization, we uncovered 3 main objectives in investing in IBM multi-vendor support services: squeezing the most life out of hardware at the best cost, ensuring equipment runs reliably by improving SLAs from support vendors, and simplifying technical support strategies, and to regain control of infrastructure support from the OEM. With that said, the composite organization experienced 3 specific benefits. The first was a reduction in support and maintenance spending, which stemmed primarily from reducing the number of support vendors that are used and gaining favorable pricing with IBM. For our composite organization, this translated into savings of $46,219 annually. The second benefit was a reduction in labor required to perform hardware support tasks. These labor savings may arise for multiple reasons, including outsourcing support tasks that were previously done internally and improved support from IBM versus previous support vendors. The composite organization realized a 37% reduction, equating to $10,603 of savings annually. The third benefit detected from our composite organization was a reduction in time needed for vendor relationship management efforts. These reductions ranged from 12% to over 85% and were a direct result of reducing the number of support vendors that the surveyed organizations used. Reducing the number of relationships by 4 vendors, our composite organization saw a savings of 43% in the assumed 60 labor hours per month, a $15,024 per year savings. One service desk manager said, "One of the benefits is the broad range of geographies and broad range of hardware devices that are covered. I don't have to worry about whether or not they, IBM, support the Eastern US or whether they support Canada." They went on to say, "In terms of IBM saving us money, the obvious play is with them extending the life of our existing hardware. It does save us a capital expense." With all those factors considered and modeling over 3 years, the study found that IBM MVS returned $178,670 in benefits to the composite organization. And that is the total economic impact of IBM multi-vendor support services. It's been a pleasure telling you about the TEI of IBM multi-vendor support services. Please read the details below this video to find a link to the full case study and a full list of disclosures. If you have any questions, we urge you to reach out to a local IBM representative for further information. And remember to give us a like if you enjoyed this video.
So that gives you another perspective from another independent survey that was done on the value to the customer. So the Edison white paper was all about the value to you of building up your recurring revenue streams. And this piece that I've just been talking through here is about how you build up the value to the client by building up that picture and moving the services from more reactive to more proactive, to make them more sticky. And that Forrester video, which is available on IBM.com actually, I found it on IBM.com, it just gives an example of multi-vendor services, which is one of the services on the route up that value chain. So any questions from anyone? All good? Has that been useful? Hopefully it's been useful for you. You'll take away something from that. Yeah? Okay, Ian, did you want to say anything to wrap up?
Obviously, just to kind of finish it off really, the kind of whiteboard selling methodology that Neil's explained, you know, if you're interested in that and you want Arrow himself basically to come into you and sit down with you on a one-to-one basis, more than happy to do that, more than happy to train your staff within your own organisations. And likewise, what we tend to do with partners that are not necessarily au fait with technical support services, we'll tend to come in with you, sit down, look at the marketplace, look at the kind of clients that you're working with and the type of solutions that you're providing, and map the TSS offerings, because there are many offerings within the TSS portfolio, to kind of map your organisation and help you maximise from the TSS portfolio, if you like. So it's kind of not, you know, here's all the offerings, just go and sell technical support services. It's kind of unique to you as a reseller and your organisation. So any questions, or, you know, we'll send out, obviously, I'll send out some more information around TSS as an offering, as a solution provider. And then, if you want us to come in and speak to you individually or have a phone call, anything like that, I'm there to help. And hopefully, this session was really useful and kind of will introduce you to new revenues really within your organisation. But thank you for your time anyway. So
yeah, thank you everyone. Thanks for coming along. Thank you. Thank you.